Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Everyman's Odyssey podcast, where we explore the values and challenges of authentic masculinity through sharing stories and ideas. I'm your host and founder of the podcast, Cole McClure. In this episode, I interview my brother-in-law, Samuel Alvarez, something we had worked on for a long time. He was actually one of the first people that I even told about my desire to start a podcast, so we've really been looking forward to this, and we had a really good time talking about our past and our struggles, the things that we love and what we're passionate about in our marriages and in our family life. So I hope you guys enjoy. Here you go. Cheers, brother.
Cheers. I've been trying to make this happen for a while now.
I know. I think you were probably the first guest as far as ideas, what we're doing, okay, when I'm going to do it, obviously you would be the first one I would do it with, because you and I have been talking about this for probably just about as long as I had wanted to do it.
Yeah.
So I ask everybody basically the same questions. There's some tweaks in there because everybody's different, but the idea is to get different answers to the same questions, because every man is different. Everybody's going through a different part of their journey, so most of it is the same, but I think for you, we kind of just covered it, but the first question is always, why did you agree to come onto the podcast? Because you said, It's super uncomfortable, super weird, but like you said, it's something we've talked about for a long time. So what made you decide I want to do this?
It's not even a decision I have to come to make. It's as soon as you said it, it's when are we doing it? That you were telling us you were doing a podcast and all this.
Yeah.
And being able to subscribe and knowing you for so long, it was just, there was no decision on, okay, I'm supporting them, whatever it is. Get on Patreon, this is my brother. And just by the man that you are is easy to get behind, because I try to emulate a lot of my life, the way you do things. So for you to be putting your advice out there and all that is something close to me, because I like emulating the way you are with your family and your kids and all that. And so getting behind being on here was a no-brainer.
Well, that's cool.
If you're asking me on manly advice or how to be every man's odyssey, or my journey is, don't be surprised if I bring up things about you that I've got to be able to take and put and install into my daily life.
Well, that's cool. I mean, that's kind of I don't know, it's almost like our relationship is the prequel to this whole podcast, because it's how, we've interacted with each other, and we've gotten to know each other's stories and helped each other. We haven't known each other our whole lives, but a long time, and enough to make big impacts on each other. So that's kind of cool. Right.
I think the way that our wives are, being sisters and being very close, I think they chose men that were probably in the same direction in life, the same core values. Mm-hmm. The only thing is you're a lot farther in your core values, so I got to steal from you. I got to grow exponentially. Well, watching you. So
thanks. Well,
so it was a no-brainer that we were going to be friends.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, it was pretty easy, I think, at the very beginning.
Right.
Well, we kind of answered the next question here, but I'll ask it, leave room to bring up other people. But the question is, who do you look to model some of your choices or influence your development as a man? I know you talked about our relationship, but you can either expand on that or talk about other guys who've been influential, whether you know them personally or not, and it's just somebody, I read this book, watched this movie, know of this person, David Goggins, or somebody who's had an impact on your life.
The thing with me is there's so many role models in my life, because I've never had a solid father figure in my life. And so the first one would be my brother, Jeremy.
Okay.
And going back and watching how he would stand up for me, and just the little things, horse playing with your sister or whatever, and then he backs up my side, and helps me wrestle or beat him up or, And so my role models as I went through, life changes for people, like him going off to college, or my stepdad not being around anymore. It's kind of like I would just pick the best quality out of the men that were surrounded around me, whether they were teachers, football coaches, my father-in-law, which I had are awesome. Well, Manuel, of course, he is awesome.
Yeah.
And, whether it's him or my stepdad growing up, he was a very patient person, which that's where I get my patience from.
Okay.
And so I would have been lucky enough to have that attribute where I picked up from a lot of different men throughout my life.
Nice. Well, I haven't really thought about this before. But would you say like your personality type, because you're saying like, okay, well, I've got all of these different figures in my life that I want to use to base how I'm going to make my decisions. Would you say that you're more drawn to pick out like, oh, well, those are things I don't want to do, and see faults that make you uncomfortable, like, okay, I don't want to do this or this? Or do you tend to see all the good and you're like, hey, like, I want to be like that, I want to be like that from each different person? Or is it kind of a mixture of both? Like, some people lean more towards things you don't want to be like, or they both, have equal qualities and you just kind of pick and choose what you want to have or don't have?
I feel that even though I had several different men role models, I don't pick and choose like I'm doing what he did in this situation, or I'm going to do what he did in this situation. All the attributes that I have of being and that I got from them were soul interactions between me and them, and then it just changed from there on. I don't get the thought like that's how my brother did this, and so I've changed it forever. It was just I like to put things on autopilot, and so I just implement. It's a reaction,
Okay, so it's not about like individual decisions in specific situations. It's just like you're observing their character, and kind of using that,
Okay. And even up to now, it's always changing because we get older, and we see things differently from a mature perspective. Just walking through life longer than most, that it's always changing, and I like to pick the better system, because not that I like to be right or anything. It's just I want to be the best version of myself, and I like going down that avenue of exploring. Okay, why does this person think this way? Why is it better? What's it hold up against? The arguments or whatever, and then do that route.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with you saying that, it makes me think of something else that I haven't asked before. Because I think if I made this own evaluation of myself, I could pick out a lot of things. But you're saying like you look at other people's lives and you're able to pick up on things that you want to implement or not. If you were to look at yourself 10 years ago and think about like how much you've grown, but like in my own life, I can see where I've grown, but I could also see things where like, man, I wish I still had this, or I wish I was still doing this that good. Like, if you look back 10 years ago, is there something that you are glad that you've changed or wish that you had back? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And 10 years ago, there's nothing. There's nothing I can look back on, because it's all from 10 years ago is I've already had met Cassie. And projected my life on a positive path than the negative path that it was on. Okay. And so since then, I've just consistently tried to be better than who I was. I always have everything pre-Cassie and after Cassie. Yeah. So that's where my
BC before Cassie.
I'm on year 12 of everything.
Well, that's pretty. I mean, that's a good answer. Like, I mean, obviously there's little dips here and there, but you're saying like it's basically upward trajectory from there. So that's pretty cool.
Right. It's because when I met her, or a little before as well, I asked God, like, please send me an angel, give me a sign, give me the person that I can get behind and show me the way. Wow. And it just seemed to be, it was Cassie. It wasn't like, and I didn't just oh, it's her. I just remember the incident of she coming out of the back room of Dairy Queen, and there's a swinging door, and it swung open and it's her, and I'm surprised, and I'm like, I get all these butterflies, and my heart starts skipping a beat. I'm like, just stunned, I was like, this is the sign.
Wow.
This has to be the sign, right? So
I didn't know that. It's like a legit like answered prayer.
Right, it was.
That's
because
pretty cool.
Yeah, I was living in my sister's house by myself, and
yeah,
it was all party and everything like that. And
so would you say that was? I mean, because I don't know, like you said about before Cassie, like would that be like the first time that you had kind of opened up to God and like asked for something, and then it just be like answered like that?
It truly was. It truly was, because my experience with him was through the Catholic Church, and so I wasn't any of the altar boys or anything like that. I would just regular attendance on Sundays. I did the first communion and second communion, but other than that, it was boring. You sat there, you get up, you get down, you get like this. I don't even know what this guy's saying, because I didn't have the intellect to understand the word that he was speaking in a very boring voice.
Yeah.
Right. So it was like, I was just at a very low point in my life, and I just asked him if this was it, and if it's not, give me the sign.
Well,
because of that, I wanted to go into the rest of my life at that point with love. Like, and for some reason I just chose that, and that was it.
Dang, what a strong foundation to have too, to like tie that experience together, like where you meet Cassidy, like the love of your life, the woman you're going to spend the rest of your life with, your wife, and tying that experience of meeting her to the experience of like for the first time having a practical application, like a reason to talk to God and him actually listen and respond, and having those two things like be the same experience. Yeah. That's pretty awesome. That's cool.
And it wasn't when she said no 7 times. She did say no 7 times, but when God tells you that it's the one, it's like, how do you give up?
Right.
How do you go? You can't.
Yeah.
So.
Right on, dude. So what are some habits that you're currently struggling to either stop or start that you think are super important to like where you see yourself going as a man? Like the guy that you want to be, a year from now, what is it that you're doing that you wish you weren't, or that you're not doing that you wish you were, that's what you're working on right now?
The thing right now is, and I've gone through a little bit of it, is having the mindset of being content with who I am, and where I'm at in life.
Yeah.
Because you're not in control of any of the outside environments that happen to you. And I don't blame things that happen to me. I choose to react to things. But on the other hand, I have my family, and I set them as the number one goal. So if I'm not making money, it doesn't matter, because my number one goal is met, and I'm content with that.
Right.
And that's what I struggle with, is I start thinking about, okay, I don't have this, I don't have that. Those people do. I need to get there. How do you get there? I got to make all this money. I got to spend all this time doing it. And I feel like that was making me depressed when I would think about it, and instantly start spiraling, right?
Yeah.
And that caused overeating, because now I'm not doing anything. I'm depressed. So I'll go eat, I'll go do this, and then think I have to work more. And then I'm feeling the stress on my body.
Right.
So I'm struggling with just being content with my number one goal. And or my one thing that I want is my family.
Yeah.
And being happy with them. Which I'm happy with them, it's just making that enough.
Right.
And that's, I'm on the upswing on that, because I'm starting to realize this. If I go tomorrow or the next day or whatever, I was taking care of the number one goal, which is the most important.
Right.
Money doesn't matter after that. My career doesn't matter after that. It's my wife and then kids.
Dude, it's so true.
And being happy with it, that they're here, they're alive,
Yep. That's exactly what I've been going through too, because it's like, yeah, like you see so much around you, like, man, I wish I had that, or like if I was, maybe I need to be working harder, or if I need to do this or that, and then my family could have these things. But yeah, like the first priority is your wife and your family that you have such a solid foundation with, that
Yeah.
you don't even realize how many people would look at that and be jealous of the relationships that you have.
Yeah.
And that's been, I think, a very recent lesson for me is understanding that, like, like you're saying, if I died tomorrow, like, I still lived a life that, 7 billion people on the planet wish that they had my problems.
Right.
And wish that they had my family to go through it with.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just so blessed to have the struggles that you do with the people that you have.
Right.
And that is, like you said, it's a hard thing to, like, even when you do understand it and you realize that, it's hard to hang on to that perspective every day. Because every day, like, that is still true, but it's also still true that you got to get out and work. Like,
yeah,
you have to, like you're saying, be content with what you have, but still aspire for more, and not because you want the things necessarily,
right.
but because you want the absolute best for the people that you love so much.
Right.
So it's a weird balance of, like, being content with what you have, but making sure that you are not giving up your potential to give them as much as you can.
Right.
Oh.
And that's exactly it, because once you choose to live for them, and yes, you do have to make money, but what ends up happening is you start focusing on the money, mm-hmm. and then you start blaming, or you feel that they're taking all your time when you could be making all this money.
Right.
And now I'm not growing, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that because I have to come back here. But once you tell yourself this is priority number one.
Right, you have to realize, like, wait, that's backwards.
This is what I want.
Right, my family isn't here to support me to get the
yeah.
things. The things are here to help me support my family.
Right.
Yeah.
So if this needs me more than this, that,
Yep.
I have to be content that my family's here and they love me.
Yeah.
And that's what I struggle with, making sure that I keep remembering that they're number one. And this is what what is that? Contentment. Just, I get one thing in life, and if it's a family and I'm broke as hell for the rest of it, like,
yep,
I was loved.
Right. Yeah, there's so many, like I said, billions of people on the planet who have, less money than you and less love than you.
Right.
So, like,
and they're loving me.
Right.
And that if I can't give it back, how selfish is that?
Right.
All I did was take their love and then made a bunch of money. Like, they never got my love back. Right.
That's a good point.
So, yeah, and I got very inspired when I heard your episode on love and how it's a service to them, and to remember, like, you're trying to do what they would want, or you're doing something for them. And so knowing Cassie's love language or my kids' love language, so that I could give them the love that they deserve.
Right.
And I never had any perspective on love,
other
than the normal. We got married. We hang out.
We love each other.
We love each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Whatever that is.
Right. It's that feeling.
It's that
like
feeling,
you're saying,
right.
the butterflies. And
Right.
Yeah. And that's, I think, a hard thing, but also an awesome thing about marriage, especially, like, once you get past those first few years, like, I don't know. It's not like, because it's not like the butterflies go away, right. But it's kind of like you just dive so much deeper, that you have these opportunities, and now it's not just a feeling, and it's not just a reaction. It's a study, and it's like an actual effort to practice and figure out how to not just love your wife, but how to love her in the way that best reaches her. And that was really hard for me. I mean, thank God, early on, Nicole and I got, like, relationship counseling, because I had no understanding of that at all. But yeah, that idea of becoming, like, an expert in loving your loved ones makes it so it doesn't ever get boring, because, like, you're constantly progressing, trying to figure out, like, okay, I know that she loves this. Now it's time to level up, and I'm going to figure out what I can do even better, or what reaches her more, or how I can listen better, or how my kids understand me more when they listen. And you're always improving, and kind of takes some of the sting out of the failures, right. Because you're learning from that too.
Yeah.
I am.
Right, and you learn your wife doesn't need you to have $1 million.
Right?
Know?
Yeah.
So
she never asked me for $1 million. Why did I even think that?
Okay, the pursuit of this isn't even loving my wife,
right?
So it's not even helping my family, other than we got to get by.
Right.
and that's all that really matters to my wife. And if that's what she loves is my presence and not the money, then I should just give her that. Because she'll love you back.
Yeah. Hey, well said. That's
know?
Good. So is there any piece of advice or like a scripture or a quote that you either read or heard from somebody that's kind of changed your perspective, whether it's early on in life or something that has been sticking with you recently that you kind of tell yourself?
It's the classic lead by example.
Yeah.
Has been coming to me a lot lately. And to be honest, it's you. You know, because I have to remind myself, like, if one of my kids are screaming or yelling, like, you're on it. It's an example that's putting your family first. You know, and I'm like, I gotta start doing that.
Yeah,
I gotta start doing, even though like I love them and they get hurt, I'll get up and go and attend to them and all that. But the way you do it, it seems like you're loving them, and it's building a relationship deeper than that's my dad, and he provides for us. Yeah. You know, that's my dad. I want them to say he listens to me, he loves me, he takes care of me, he knows everything about me.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel watching you with your kids and your wife and all that is lead by example, which I need to take in. You know.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that, I don't know why, but that makes me think of like, I don't know why I haven't made this connection before, but I've been thinking a lot lately about like how hard it is to be a dad to different age groups simultaneously.
Yes.
And you and I are in the same boat in that scenario. I mean, you even more so because now you've got a kid who's in college. So like you've got a grown adult, and we both have teenagers in high school. And then, you know, some in the middle all the way down to toddlers and such young kids. And the constant, like, ability to adapt and improvise. And you're the same dad, but you have to change your tactics.
Right.
Like, you don't treat your 3-year-old the same way you treat your 14-year-old.
Yeah.
And I personally get hung up a lot on that. Like, I'll start to baby the 14-year-old or not give her the responsibilities that she's ready for because I'm so used to parenting down at this level, and vice versa. Like, I'll expect more of the toddler because like, oh, you should be able to do this by now. Your sister's doing it, forgetting about the gap sometimes.
Right.
Like, and Nicole, you know, she recognizes this too and has been really helpful and like reminding me where we're at. I don't know, but does that happen to you where you're like, you feel like you're parenting, I guess parenting like at the wrong level because you're pointing your tactics at the wrong kids sometimes, or it's just, I have a hard time keeping track of all the different approaches for each kid. Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. But when I get the opportunity to parent my child in a situation or find the responsibility, I usually am able to pick up on who I'm talking to, and I base it off the relationship that we already have.
Okay.
So it's not like all my kids should be doing this. Right. I just go off. It's like when you're away from a friend for a long time and you come back and you just pick it up right where you left off. I'm usually like that with my kids. So it's like,
dang. That's a super good example.
Yeah, I could just I'm talking to Blake. I know what she's capable of.
Yeah.
I'm talking to Riley. I know what she's capable of, or Carson, because all my kids are different. There's no like, this is how you are. This is how you two are the same. You know, it's just, I just try to keep it in the forefront of who I'm talking to.
Wow. That's deep. Like, I hope that they appreciate that, because there's, I don't know, a lot of dads who couldn't make that statement, I think, where you're like, oh, I just pick up where, like a good friend that has, like, to be able to have that reflexive, like, I'm back in with you and I in our relationship. Like, so to have that knowledge of each individual kid, that's, I don't know, that's big. And I think that will play out pretty well in the long run for you, like with their relationships with you, because that is pretty awesome that they know that, like, that is my dad. Like, not just like, oh, he's the dad of the family. Like, that is
Right.
my dad, and I have this relationship with him that means this to me, and he recognizes that. That is super cool.
Yeah.
I liked it. That was a good thing. All right, so with having been married 11 years and 5 kids, what is, I won't say the worst because that has negative connotations. What's the hardest part about your role as a man, as father and husband in that? And then after that, like, what's something that lets you know that you're doing something right?
Yeah. What's letting me know do something right is my wife's happy. So
There you go.
if she's happy, I must be doing something right. But as far as being the man in the relationship, I feel truly that this day and age is like, there's things that we could all do that helps the household or helps parenting or helps the income. And I feel like most households have a 2-income party to survive.
Yeah.
That we can't just be like, I'm the man and I wear the pants and I make the decisions because I'm pulled over here for work. I'm pulled over here for a kid. She's pulled over here for work or another kid or a gathering, or this bill needs to get paid now. Like, I think households are a one when you're married.
Right.
So is the money, so is the workload, so is the love, so is the responsibility of keeping your house in order. It's shared. And when you can pick it up and do your end, doesn't mean that they won't later in some other way.
Right.
So the part of, for me, is realizing that I don't have to worry about the finances. I struggle with that because I feel that men are supposed to do that, which I don't know why. My first, going back to like the first question of but the men in my family are in that have influenced me have always been work hard, and I work hard,
right?
But once you're married and you live in the times that we live now, you got to question why do I have to work hard and be the one to have the weight of finances on my back?
Yeah.
I don't.
Right.
I have a wife now, and we're a team, and that's where I struggle, is knowing that we're doing it together.
That's a good point, because you're right. Like, I think it is a stronger approach to recognize that you're a team in everything. Like, you are a team in earning money, regardless of which one of you is doing it. You are a team in spending the money, however you decide to split those financial responsibilities, you're doing it together. Like you're saying, like, everything has to be a team effort, especially in the times and the economy that we're in. Like,
and what helps my number one goal?
Right. Like you said, taking care of your family.
Yeah.
But it is harder. Like, that is a stronger, better approach, but it is harder as a man to think, like, it feels like you're not measuring up in some ways.
Right. And that, you got to ask yourself, to who? To who? Who are you measuring up to?
Dang.
You know?
That's a good point.
No, yourself.
You're right. Yeah. Who's measuring you that you actually care about? Like,
right.
Yeah. Yourself, your
and
wife,
you're the number one
God,
person that I know that doesn't care what somebody else outside your family thinks about you.
That took a long time. A real long time.
So it's like, I've struggled with that. Who am I measuring myself to?
Yeah.
People that aren't in my life every day.
Right.
And what's that? What do my kids care that I'm not in this guy's health, as healthy as this guy, or rich as that family, or my daughters just care that I'm there.
Yeah.
And my sons just care that I call and talk to them.
Yeah.
Or talk about jiu-jitsu, or just start wrestling in the middle of the living room. Like,
yeah. Right.
You know, so.
Dang, that one's going to stick with me. Measuring up to who? That's good. So if you remember from the last interview, this is where things got pretty personal. What's something that you've gone through in your life that you feel stunted your growth as a man? Like, good, bad, or indifferent? Like, you experience this thing, and it's typically a setback or some sort of maybe even traumatic event where you're just like, crap, like, I'm done, or I'm damaged, or like now my potential is set so much lower because of this thing, either something that you've done or something that was done to you.
Right. I honestly feel the number one would have to be thinking that I'm stupid, or thinking that, because when I would sit in classrooms, I was always in the back. I was always quiet, always never rose my hand. And so to be told, like, hey, what's going on? I don't know. How am I supposed to know,
Yeah.
And then you just get behind. And then it's easy for a teacher who has 30 plus kids all the time. It's like, I can't help this one. I can't help this one. And I think that was how it was until I was in like 6th or 7th grade. And my mom, she was my advocate, and it was like, you guys ain't helping him. And she moved me out of a class, out of the whole school, and got me into a school that had a smaller group.
Okay.
And I went from 6th grade, like being in 6th grade, but at a 3rd grade level at everything, to catching up by 8th grade.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just from a little bit of like
the one-on-one and being able to, like, here's how we read. We do reading time. We do spelling time. We do math time. And it was one-on-one. Yeah. And I got to talk to somebody, or it was a smaller group, so I was able to be engaged more. Yeah. And so it's easier in the bigger classes to just let a kid go, and that's what I honestly think happened. But knowing I was behind, I ingrained the I'm too dumb to know. I'm not intelligent. I'm not this. I'm not that. And some I probably still struggle with, but it's not as bad because I know I can learn now. Right. And I do things, listen to podcasts or work on my business or whatever it is, and I learn things through that. But it's like, I always say, oh, I'm way behind. I'm way behind my peers. Yeah. And it puts me down. It like makes me depressed or whatever. Like, but that's what I think. That's what was the number one thing, is the internal talk is like, oh, you're stupid, you're this, you're that, you're not worth it.
After that transition in junior high, how long did you think it took for you to actually like gain like confidence to understand? And everybody feels dumb sometimes, but like to have an understanding of yourself, like, no, I'm not dumb. Like I learn in a different way, or I needed a little bit of extra help early on, and that's fine. Like, so how long did it take you to be able to walk in that on a normal basis and understand, like, that you're not those negative things that you're telling yourself?
I'd say till I was like 25.
Really?
Yeah. Really, because what I had met Cassie, and as I was meeting her, I was learning how to drive diesel trucks. Mm-hmm. And just knowing like that I aced the test, like after doing it on my own. I think that's the other thing, is I had to do it on my own. Yeah. And to change it up real quick, this made sense for me, is change it up real quick. Someone was saying, I was talking to someone like, if I could go back, I would go to college, right? Mm-hmm. And do all that. But the 18-year-old me wasn't ready. The 21-year-old me wasn't ready. So there's that. It wasn't until like I was 25 and I asked God for Cassie, and then did the trucking school ASAT test, where I wanted to start taking control of my life. Okay. And so that's when I started knowing, like, okay, I can do this, and I need to do it on my own. Yeah. And that's when I feel I started growing as a man, as a husband, as, my education or whatever. Nice. Anything I wanted to be better at.
That's cool. And it makes you think of this. So, like, I've felt like I've made dumb decisions a lot. And, like, but when you said, like, oh, well, I wasn't ready for college at 18 or 21. And I've had feelings like that about certain decisions in my life. And it's like, well, shoot, if I had made those decisions the way, everybody else was, or if I had done this back then where could I have been now? But I remember there was I don't know, I went to church a long time ago, and this sermon was talking about, like, it doesn't matter. Like,
right.
Wherever you are when you're making this decision, or God's coming into your life and putting you on this path, like, you've never existed before. The thing that God is building in your life has literally never happened before. So it takes as long as it takes. Like,
right.
So if you start at 18, great. If you start at 25, great. Like, whenever you come around to making that decision, maybe some things would have been better, but you don't know. Maybe they would have been a lot worse. So yeah, like,
and you could have had everything handed to you up to that decision, and then you would have looked back like, oh, no, never mind, I'm not ready.
Right. Yeah.
Even though you were doing great
Exactly.
or something, and then you were ready. Yeah. So once I decided I was ready, I think it was my past, all my experience that said, stop, commit.
Mm-hmm.
And when you commit to it, it's forever.
Dude, that's good. I think I'm not particularly fond in this moment of getting older.
Yeah.
But that is one of the best parts about it, is that comfort in the unknown, and just knowing, like, I could have done things different. I could do things different still, but, like, as long as you feel like you're on the right path and you're doing the right thing now, none of that matters anymore. Like, the regret and the overthinking things, like, being able to recognize, because you have so many decisions behind you and you've done so many different things at this point leading up to it, like, you're just kind of cool with what you got to do, and it doesn't matter. That's
exactly
so awesome to be like, I wasn't ready then, I'm ready now, let's go.
Well, how many billionaires stories do you hear? I lost it all.
Yeah. Right.
Right. I was given everything and I lost it all, and I wasn't ready.
Right. Or the
but after losing it all, they were ready.
Right. Or
I had lost it all.
The only thing they keep is the money, and they're like, well, shoot, it's not worth it to me to keep all the money and then lose the family and the relationship.
Then they never grow.
Right.
They never,
So yeah, it's, there's something different for everybody, which is awesome. But yeah, it's good to recognize, like, yeah, maybe I could have done that then, but I'm doing it now, and that's where I'm at. That's my journey. So I'm just gonna own it and go for it. Like,
right.
That's cool. So this next question actually sounds the same as the last one, but it has, I don't know, evoked a different response each time. So we talked about, like, something that you went through that stopped you, or at least paused you from being the man that you wanted to be. But what's something, like, specifically negative that you experienced that you're very grateful for now? Like, something that maybe even at the time you thought was going to wreck your life, but now you're like, thank God that I went through that suffering in order to be where I'm at now.
Yeah. And I'll go back to what I said in the beginning. There's before Cassie and after Cassie, is because there was nothing to go for.
Yeah.
Other than what I was living for, which is either to get drunk or go have sex or
so then
whatever, you know what I mean?
Like, what was the suffering that led to the catalyst that brought you to like, what was the suffering that brought you to the point where you're like, you know what, I need to just, maybe for the first time, like, ask God for something? Like, what was something that brought you to that point?
I'd have to say it was just not, I didn't like where I was at in the moment, and being drunk all the time, living in my sister's house, never having any money. I think it was accumulation of a lot of, and being in a relationship that was only selfish, like me wanting everything for myself, whether it was to buy, get all the money and go buy alcohol, or just I was only with her for sex, or I'm only staying with you because we have kids, and not really. I was thinking everything else was the problem, and really it was me. And I think realizing that I was the problem and I created my own reality.
Well,
I needed to give it to God,
yeah,
and start following Him. And I think that's what it was. Realizing I was the problem and I was where I was at because of me.
dang.
And I wasn't man enough to step up and stop it sooner, or know I was in a bad relationship, or know that spending all my check and money on alcohol, because I think I'm just having fun,
Right.
Or it's fine, the kids are fed and everything, and I'm having a good time. Like, but I kept waking up broke, not happy, not going nowhere, no house, no vehicle.
And then discontent and wondering why you're always broke and not
right.
having these things that you feel like you should have. Yeah.
Right. And realizing it's me and not them.
Yeah.
And I had to man up and like start taking ownership of everything in my life.
Dang. I know you and I, finished Jocko's book, Extreme Ownership, around the same time. And that's exactly that's what it taught me too. Is like, there's always this scenario. If you just change your perspective a little bit, you'll find where you could have done something better. So now that you have that, do you feel, it's a super cheesy example, but the picture in my head was like that recognition kind of serves bumpers in a bowling alley. Do you ever feel yourself kind of brushing up against those old habits or train of thought, and you're like, wait a second, I'm getting back to how I used to think and I need to recenter myself? Does that make sense?
I did that in the beginning a lot more in the beginning. Luckily Cassie was patient and forgiving, and the same situation that where you were able to talk to Jason in a loving way, hey man, don't you think you should probably go check out this and and get help? I feel Cassie did that for me.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and it was I've never messed up, and then someone still be like, hey, you can't do that, and this is why, and I love you in a nice, kind way.
Yeah.
It was always like, you fuck up, you piece of shit, this, that, and you're like, yeah, well, I know. That's why I did it.
Yeah, right.
Because I knew I was going to get this reaction out of you, and I got that reaction all the time.
Right.
Until someone said, this is why it's hurting me.
Right.
This is why it's hurting the people around you.
So someone loving you through it is way more of a wake-up call.
Right. And then her loving me through it gave me the space to think about it.
Yeah.
Whoa, I've never seen it from that direction. And then you're able to see it next time.
Right.
And stop yourself. Or you don't, but you're like, oh, I fucked up.
Yeah.
And then you realized it sooner than before, and then you're able to I am hurting them. And you live through it knowing what was happening, right?
Right.
And then you're like, okay, when did that start happening? Right at this moment.
That's cool.
Right after 7 beers or whatever, 12 beers, whatever that trigger is. Yeah. There's a trigger that you go from nice, happy, all that, and then into, okay, this is too much. This is over the limit.
That's
until
cool.
Someone could tell you, hey, this is over the limit.
Yeah.
You'll always go past it.
And then you do that enough times that you grow to the point that now you're not having to be told every time. You're starting to recognize oh wait, I've been here before.
Right.
We're going to go ahead and change course.
Exactly.
And then you get closer and closer and closer to the center of where you want to be, and you just stay on that trajectory.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Exactly.
You're good. I like this. All right, so the final formal question of the interview is, what's a short message or something you would want to share with, at the time of this recording, it's a pretty small audience for the podcast.
Yeah.
But small audiences are important too. But if you had an opportunity to share a message with a group of people, what's something that you feel like isn't talked about enough that you want to tell somebody?
It's not talked enough about what I mentioned earlier, is being one in your relationship, and knowing that there's no singular male, female. It's just, what do you bring to the table? And that's going to be your responsibility because it's what you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
And your partner will pick up the slack. And whatever they're good at and not good at, you pick up the slack on their end. And it's just being a one unit, and not to think because you're a certain gender or anything like that that you should be doing that.
Right.
Right? It's one. The household's one. Your family's one. Your marriage is one. Your money's one. Your vehicle is my vehicle. Yours,
right.
Everything's ours in this household. And once you do that, you can combine your beliefs. And once you combine your beliefs with your spouse, it comes one of the other most important things is how your kids are going to be raised. And when you're together on everything, they're going to see the value in that. And they're going to want those values.
Right.
And when they leave your household, they're going to understand that that I need to be one with my wife.
Right.
And if it's different than what's in my household, that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
But when they come back or they come over, they'll know my values. They'll know how to respect me and my household.
Right.
And that all comes back to being one.
Yeah.
And not me versus you. And then you coming together with your core values in the household.
That's such a good point too. Is like, so I have, you know this, but I have zero combat experience. But like, what it makes me think about is, when they talk about tactics, whether it be for ambushers or movement or whatever it is, like there's this theory of, you want, in best case scenario, overlapping fields of fire. You want to be covering each other's sectors. So like, if it's just like, you do this, I'll do this, we're going to do our separate things because I'm the man, you're the woman. So, okay, well, now you're both just narrowly focused on what you believe is your sole task, which is great. You can specialize in something and that works for a while. But when you start to get overwhelmed and, instead of targets or enemies, you have problems coming at you in life, you can only do so much. Mm-hmm. And one partner might get overwhelmed or exhausted before the other, and you're not going to know it because I'm looking here. Oh, whatever's over there, that's your problem. Yeah. I'm doing great right here. Right. But when you take on this perspective of like there is no dividing line. Like if I need help, I'm going to ask for it. And if you need help, I'm going to give it. Now your fields of fire open up like, yes, this is where I'm looking, but I got you covered. Like if you need me, I'm right here. If I need you, you're right here. Now everything is opened up and you can conquer the theoretical battlefield of life. And that is such a better way to go through things. And I mean, and that's great from a convenience standpoint and tackling these problems. But then you look at it from like a relational standpoint, like, okay, I'm focused here, you're focused there. We're each doing our own thing. And even if that works perfectly and everything gets taken care of, you're still two separate people doing separate tasks. Yeah. Whereas if you combine those focuses and overlap for each other, you're now kind of forced to know and trust that person more than you would have. And you have such a better relationship. Even if the task and objective has the same outcome, the relationship you're building with that person is so much better than you would have had on your own.
Right. Yeah, because once you build it together, Cassie knows what I need. Right. And like you said, we can communicate. And it's not just asking, it's asking in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And you don't get that unless you're communicating a lot. Right. And working together a lot. Because if you don't do that, I could be out working my tail off and trying to get a job done. And if Cassie calls me and I don't answer her because I'm out there working, she doesn't know what I'm going through. Right. So she's going to be worried or irritated or this and that. That closes communication of working together. Right. But if she knows she can call me and I can give her an update and be like, hey, I'm looking to be home at this time. Well, now she knows where to pick up the slack. Right. Is it picking up the kids or picking up the daycare? Or, hey, I'm done early. Great. I can go make this meeting then. And I can go pick up the kids in the daycare. It's not her. That's the other thing is then you get rid of you versus me. Like, I'm doing the most.
Right.
I'm doing this and that.
There's no comparison because it's all shared.
Right. And you get rid of that. You're like, great, I picked up the slack and she can go do that. Or she can pick up the slack for me so I can finish my day. And it's that one unit being one.
Yeah, that's important. And it's probably, it's something that I obviously like haven't mastered, maybe never will. But I used to get hung up a lot on the comparison and the things that I'm doing versus the things that I'm receiving, which is a totally screwed up way to look at life in general, let alone like the relationship with your spouse. But like, well, what am I getting here versus what I'm contributing? And it's ignorant. And even in those moments, if I was clearly wrong because I don't have the perspective, I don't have the situational awareness to see what my wife is doing for me because I'm over here doing this thing. So I feel like, oh, well, I'm not getting any support because I'm over here doing all this, and this, and you're not helping me with these things. Like, well, yeah, but that's because they're over there doing all this other stuff that I'm completely oblivious to.
Right.
Don't ask for help on, don't offer any help for them on, and then act like I'm some sort of martyr. And I certainly hope that I've gotten a lot better at that, but yeah, I guess my point was like the unity like you're talking about is like foundationally one of the best things for a successful relationship, and being able to take on your responsibilities that you are in agreement on, like, hey, we can't both do this one thing. That's got to be your job. Great.
Right.
But while I'm doing this, if I'm falling behind here, like if I'm falling behind, it is my responsibility to let you know. Yeah. And if I'm falling behind and I don't even know it, now it's your responsibility to come alongside me and be like, hey, like, you're doing great here, but you're missing this and this, and I need you to keep doing those things. Like, and that back and forth and accountability and reliance on each other, man, it changed my marriage for sure. And I, can't think of in the moment what was a catalyst for that, but that approach to how you live your lives together, way better than anything else I can think of.
Right. And that extends after you've done it. You can do it in your household. You can do that in your work, and you can do that in where you worship. You can do that with your children, and it's the number one thing to grow in a relationship. It's communication and being together on the same page.
Yes. Well said. That, sir, is the end of the formal interview process. So thank you so much.
So happy to do this.
Shake your hand for the sake of the video. Brother. Now, I don't know. I'll cut to an outro here or something. All right. Well, that wraps up the interview with my brother Sam. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, we had a lot of fun recording it. And in fact, it actually goes on for about another 20 minutes. But for the sake of this episode, I cut some of that out, but it will be available up on the Everyman's Odyssey Patreon page. You don't even have to pay or subscribe to watch the video. You can just go check it out, and we dive into some really interesting topics that we had a great time going over there as well. So please go check that out, like I said, on Everyman's Odyssey Patreon page. And as always, I encourage you guys to check us out on social media, on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, however you like to connect. And stay tuned because we've got a lot of really exciting content and some new announcements coming up soon. And as always, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Take care.